Average Joe's Drive-In is proudly sponsored by the Maine Cannababes. The Cannababes are a charity group of pro-cannabis women from the state of Maine who are bringing worthy attention to various causes in the medical cannabis community. This year, they launched their very first Maine Cannababes Pinup Calendar, which they are taking pre-orders for as we speak. All the proceeds from the calendar are going to worthy charitable causes. If you are interested in purchasing one or finding out more about the Cannababes, you can go to their website, www.maincannababes.com, or find them on most major forms of social media like Facebook and Instagram. If you order a calendar and enter the code word Average Joe's Drive-In, you could win a chance to get an autographed picture of your favorite Maine Cannababe. Once again, put in the code word Average Joe's Drive-In for a chance to win an autographed picture of your favorite Maine Cannababe.
Welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In,
Your weekly podcast on movies, music, games,
and other things entertainment related.
Now, your host,
TJ Washburn.
Welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In, episode 16. I am your host, TJ Washburn. Today's episode is a review episode, and I want to talk a little bit about what I have coming up for the month of October and the Average Joe's Drive-In's 31 Days of Horror 2017. But I'm going to kick this off with some reviews of some recently watched films. And yeah, so let's get to it. First up on my list, hold on for 1 second because I'm not prepared this morning, is 2005's War of the Worlds, directed by Steven Spielberg. This film stars Tom Cruise, Dakota Fanning, Tim Robbins. 116-minute runtime, so it's a little long, PG-13, and I watched this on DVD. Synopsis: as Earth is invaded by alien tripod fighting machines, one family fights for survival. I'll be honest, Tom Cruise seems like such a whack job in real life that I can't get past that fact. Might spur some debate about separating the actor from the person and if that should affect our reasoning for avoiding stuff they're in. But I'm not going to get into that because, one, I'm by myself and it would be kind of weird to debate myself on this. But, you know, two, that's a different topic for another time that I may actually tackle with one of my guests during the month of October. I'll admit he's a damn good actor, but I've always had trouble getting past the crazy. So, there are a whole pile of movies of his I haven't watched. I've recently decided The Avoidance is kind of silly. Who cares? It's just one of those weird hang-ups that I need to get over. Who cares about his personal life as long as he's not hurting anyone? There's no reason I should avoid his films based on that principle. This was one of the films I grabbed off the 97-cent rack a little while ago, but I hadn't gotten around to watching. I've caught bits and pieces of this over the years, but I've never seen it from start to finish. I've also heard very mixed reviews, which was another reason I hadn't gone out of my way to see it. But, for 97 cents, I didn't have anything to lose. I'll be honest, I didn't hate it. It was a bit on the mediocre side, but I never felt myself getting bored. The acting was good. The effects looked good. I don't know if it's because the story had been told before and been around for a long time, but it just didn't wow me at all. It was just a very underwhelming film. There was something about it that failed to take it to that next level for me. And, I mean, I love sci-fi, but it's always been really hit or miss for me. I never felt the film took any chances, and that was probably my biggest gripe with it. It was just kind of very cookie cutter, cardboard, run of the mill. And like I said, sci-fi has been a genre that's always real hit or miss for me. When it's good, I love it. When it's bad or mediocre, I just kind of shrug my shoulders and move on. Um, there's also the fact that I expect more out of Steven Spielberg. After all, he directed my favorite movie of all time and a pile of other films that are near and dear to me. So I hold him to a higher standard than I would a lot of other directors. If this had been a brand new director putting this out, I probably would have been more impressed. But it's Steven Spielberg, so it really didn't, it really didn't take it to that next level for me. War of the Worlds definitely worth a watch if you enjoy sci-fi. I'm sure my review makes me sound like I absolutely hated it, which wasn't the case. Just didn't blow me away. With the cast, director, and subject matter, I feel like it should have. I'm not sure I'll watch it again anytime soon, but I will give it a second viewing sooner or later. My rating was a 5.5 out of 10. IMDb's rating is a 6.5 out of 10, so a little lower than IMDb, which, the IMDb ratings are... They're very hard to call them gospel because you have such a wide variety. And I mean, it's like anything. Ratings are all subjective. So you got to take them with a grain of salt. I've tried not to let a film's review on any websites sway me into watching something. I try to watch what I think is interesting. So, a lot of times I watch stuff a lot of people avoid simply because of ratings. But we all do what we've got to do. Following up War of the Worlds, I watched a documentary about the original Orson Welles broadcast War of the Worlds. That was called American Experience, War of the Worlds, directed by Kathleen O'Connell, at a 52-minute runtime. It was a TV PG. I believe this was a series on PBS. I'm not 100% sure, but it is part of a series. This is on Netflix. The synopsis: an account of Orson Welles' 1938 radio drama broadcast that inadvertently started a mass panic. I figured, seeing I just watched the Tom Cruise version of the film, this was a good documentary to watch. It focuses on the original radio broadcast that sent many Americans into a panic when it was broadcast over the air. It's a pretty solid doc, not great, but worth a watch. I actually thought the 52-minute runtime was a bit long. They could have shaved 10 minutes off, and I don't think it would have hurt anything. But overall, it was decent. My rating for this was a 6 out of 10. IMDb was 7.2 out of 10. Next up was an animated film that I absolutely adored. It's called Kubo and the Two Strings from 2016. Directed by Travis Knight, has a 101-minute runtime, rated PG. This is on Netflix. The synopsis: a young boy named Kubo must create a magical suit of armor worn by his late father in order to defeat a vengeful spirit from the past. What a fantastic movie. I wasn't sure what to expect going into this film. I'd never watched a trailer. All I knew about it was from the synopsis, so I was pleasantly surprised when it was as good as it was. Animated films like this are always so hit or miss, which is part of the reason I've avoided checking it out, but enough good praise from several of my friends recently, I had to give it a go. This year, I have seen two of the best animated movies I have watched in a long time. This and Moana. I think I may have liked this more than Moana. They were both great films, but there was something about the story and voice acting that captivated me more with Kubo. It was just visually captivating and great storytelling. I found myself chuckling out loud a bunch of times. From start to finish, it's just well-rounded and a beautifully told story. I didn't realize that this was stop-motion animation until I was probably 2/3 of the way through. Um, and then I kind of got thinking there were some things that I noticed that just, but it's so well blended with traditional and the stop motion that it's almost like seamless. You really can't tell. If you don't know, I don't really feel like you'd be able to tell. But so that was kind of a cool little thing. But I highly recommend checking this out. This is a great movie for the whole family. Um, and it's just a great movie. Period. For anybody. I'm almost 40 and I loved this. My rating for this was an 8.5 out of 10. IMDb rating was 7.8 out of 10. And again, all of these reviews will be going up on the Average Joe's Drive-In Facebook page. So, as I say, every review episode, swing over to the Facebook page, facebook.com/Average Joe's Drive-In podcast, and, share your thoughts if you've seen these films, or if you watch them and then you want to share your thoughts, whatever. But I would love to hear what you guys think of these. So, yeah. I love to interact with people listening to the show. I'd like to hear from more of you. I've been noticing a pretty decent increase in plays and listenership. So, I would really, like I said, I would really like to interact with some of you and, hear what you think of different things of some of the reviews, and hear what you just, think about. If you're enjoying the podcast, let me know. I'm pretty easygoing and I like to talk to people, so hey, why not? So yeah, definitely check out Kubo and the Two Strings. This one is one from the VHS vault, and that is 1999's Mystery Alaska, directed by Jay Roach, who, if you don't know, Jay Roach directed, I believe, the Austin Powers films. This has a runtime of 119 minutes, and it is rated R. I watched it on VHS, obviously. This is a VHS vault, starring Russell Crowe, Burt Reynolds, and Hank Azaria. The synopsis for this film: a publicity stunt turns into the ultimate lopsided competition when the world-famous New York Rangers face off against the team from Mystery, Alaska, a hockey-loving town of only 633 people. Team Mystery is a ragtag collection of eccentric locals, including the town sheriff, its grocer, a delivery man, and a high school senior who play for the love of the game, not fame or big money. Mystery Alaska is one of those feel-good sports movies akin to films like Rocky and Major League. This is one I hadn't seen in years. I saw it a handful of times when it first came out, but I remembered adoring it. It's basically a combination of those two films, but set against a hockey background instead of baseball or boxing. You could even throw in a film like maybe Necessary Roughness, or or Major League. I mentioned Major League, but you could throw in like Necessary Roughness would be another film, kind of a prime example. A little bit of that kind of comedy, with the comedy elements. You have a David versus Goliath cliche that is often the focal point of these types of films. The film isn't wholly original by any means in its plot or execution. It very much follows the tropes of those aforementioned films. That being said, Mystery Alaska is a film with a lot of heart and humor. It's tough not to love this movie, especially if you're a hockey fan. Even if you're not, it's still an enjoyable flick. The cast in the film is fantastic. They are very believable as a small-town regular Joes with big aspirations. I will be honest, I'm not the biggest Russell Crowe fan, but he is excellent in this film. Although almost 2 hours long, it really never feels like it's dragging, and it moves at a steady pace. Like I said, if you're a fan of sports movies with heart and you haven't watched this film before, I highly recommend giving it a shot. I don't think you will be disappointed in the least. My rating for this film is an 8 out of 10. IMDb's rating is 6.7 out of 10. Alrighty, I gotta take a drink of my Dunkin' coffee here, because it's just one of those awesome Maine fall, kind of early fall days, and I need coffee. So bear with me for 1 second. Alrighty, that was delicious. Up next, we have Lara Croft, Tomb Raider from 2001, directed by Simon West. With a runtime of 100 minutes, rating PG-13, starring Angelina Jolie, Jon Voight, Ian Glenn, and Daniel Craig. I watched this on DVD. Part of the reason I was interested in watching is I know the new Tomb Raider film is coming out, and I haven't seen this in a long time. So, the synopsis for this is video game adventuress Lara Croft comes to life in a movie where she races against time and villains to recover powerful ancient artifacts. Like I mentioned, I watched this one when it first came out, and I remember struggling to get through it and being rather underwhelmed. I picked up a copy on DVD for cheap. It was so unmemorable for me, I honestly remembered next to nothing about it. So it was like going in watching this completely fresh. I thought maybe I had been too harsh on my dislike for it, so I wanted to give it another shot. Upon this viewing, while I didn't hate it, it sure as hell felt like a whole lot of missed opportunity. The cast is full of heavy hitters. There's no reason it couldn't have been the next Indiana Jones franchise, because let's face it, that's exactly what Tomb Raider franchise is. It's Indiana Jones with a female protagonist. It felt too much like the Resident Evil movies. While I love those for being what they are, cheesy, dumb fun, it doesn't work well with this film. The storyline was all over the place. I had a hard time even following what the hell was going on because it was so just disjointed. It felt more like a compilation of moments rather than a cohesive film. It was tolerable. I have sat through much, much worse. Maybe the reboot will get it right, take a more serious adventure tone to nail the promise that could be had with the franchise as a film series. Only time's gonna tell on that one. My rating for this was a 4 out of 10. IMDb's rating was a 5.8 out of 10. So I'm just double checking all my reviews here, because the stuff I'm going to get into next also is part of, well, not part of what's going to be coming up. It's horror. Most of it's horror related. So what I want to talk about before I get into those reviews, the horror reviews, is Average Joe's Drive-In 31 Days of Horror 2017. Now, I have done this for the last several years. It's just a fun self-challenge that a few of my friends do, and that challenge is to watch at least one horror movie for every day of the month of October. Now that I'm doing the podcast, I wanted to extend the challenge out to the listeners of the show. So, if you want to play along, here are the self-imposed loose rules. It's a short list of rules, believe me. If you want to play along, you don't have to watch one. You don't have to watch a movie a day. Just one for each day of the month. While I personally try to do one a day, it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes I watch 3 or 4, like on a weekend or something. I don't watch a lot of TV usually during the month of October. It's pretty much dedicated to just watching a lot of horror movies. So, there's that. So you don't have to worry about if you miss a day. It's not a big deal. Just watch. But it's kind of a fun thing to do, to dedicate your month to that. Your viewing, habits. The second rule is it can include any of the horror subgenres, as well as thrillers and suspense, because there are definitely elements of horror in those, although it's usually more of a psychological kind. I would put movies like Cape Fear, Basic Instinct, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. I'm just having a hard time thinking of any right now. So just that type of film. So those I count as part of the horror subgenre. Um, some people don't consider thrillers and suspense. That's why I wanted to bring that up. Also, a suggestion if you're playing along, it's fun to pick a subgenre or a theme for what you watch. While not exclusively sticking to that, it's a good time to hit up certain films of that ilk. I'm talking about slashers, monster movies, paranormal, werewolves, vampires, psychological, remakes, franchise, directors, writers, etc. You kind of pick some sort of a theme. It could be horror movies with a female killer or something. It could be anything you want, but it's just kind of something fun to do. And a lot of times it gives you a chance and a reason to dig for some of those films that you may have wanted to watch or you've never heard of, or it's kind of fun. You get to do a little bit of research and find out some of these different films, and so that's pretty much it. I'd love for the listeners to keep track of what they watch and then share it at the end of the month. I want to know what everybody watched. It could make for some fun discussion. I'll be writing a brief review, as I usually do for each film I watch. Unless it's something I've already reviewed in the past, I will also be trying to do a review episode each week for the month on what I've watched up to that point. Kind of like this type of episode where I just come on and by myself and just kind of talk about, and then I'm going to do kind of a just a breakdown of the whole month and that whole thing at the very end of it. This is going to be a fun month on Average Joe's Drive-In. There's a lot of horror discussion and extra episodes. It's one of my favorite times of the year to binge on movies, especially horror. I watch horror all year round, but I really go nuts in October. I'm on a side note, I am starting a week early this year because I'm going to be going away on vacation the last week of October, and I'm not sure how much I'll be able to get in for films. So today is my kickoff. I'm going to focus on franchise films. What I'm talking about there is like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Hellraiser, Critters, those types of franchise type. That's what I consider a franchise. I would even consider the Romero Dead films a franchise. And directors and writers. So, films by certain directors or films based on certain writers' works like Stephen King, Clive Barker, that sort of thing. While this isn't going to be all I watch, the bulk will be more than likely be in those categories. There's a Friday the 13th coming up in October this year, so my best friend Pete is supposed to be coming down, and he and I are going to do a special Friday the 13th episode. We're still working out the details on exactly what we're doing. We're not going to watch the whole series because we just don't have the time to do that whole thing. I think right now the plan is for us to pick some of our favorites out of that and watch that. I know we're definitely watching one. I believe 2, 4, and 6, and maybe a couple more. But what I think we're going to be doing is we're going to watch first one, do a little review episode, then we're going to do watch the rest of them and then kind of break them down or something like that. We're still working some details out, but it's going to be fun. Be the first time I'm going to put up like more than one episode in a day. We're just going to kind of pop them up each one so people can listen to them. And yeah, so that's what I wanted. So like I said, it'd be really cool if you guys play along at home. I posted what I just talked about up on the Average Joe's Drive-In page again. Facebook.com/Average Joe's Drive-In Podcast. So if you want to play along, just you can go to the page, find the doc. I pinned it to the top of the page so you're able to find it easily. and you can kind of go from there. And if you want to discuss it or ask some questions, just leave a comment in that. So, to get us warmed up for the 31 Days of Horror, I'm going to review some of the horror stuff that I have watched this recently. And we're going to start it off with some Stephen King stuff. Because it was Mr. King's 70th birthday the other day, and it's just a great. And there's been, the awesome resurgence of Stephen King stuff. So I want to talk about a documentary I watched called Unearthed and Untold: The Path to Pet Cemetery. This came out in 2017, directed by John Capopino and Justin White. It has a 75-minute runtime, not rated, and it is on Amazon Prime. The synopsis: this documentary is a detailed look into the making of Pet Sematary, one of the most enduring cult horror classics of our generation. I need to get this out of the way first thing. I may be really, really biased on my enjoyment of this documentary. Most of Pet Sematary was shot less than 50 miles from where I live, and I know many of those locations really well. The directors did a wonderful job creating a very well put together documentary. Their interviews with the cast members and people involved with the film, coupled with revisiting of the locations, were a fantastic insight into the behind the scenes of the film. I learned a ton that I didn't know. You can definitely tell this was a labor of love project for the filmmakers. It definitely shows, and it's a much watch for anybody who's a fan of the movie, or a Stephen King fan, or people from that area in Maine, because it's really good. My rating was a 9 out of 10. The IMDb rating is 8 out of 10. And again, you can find this on Amazon Prime if you have it. I'm sure it's probably available in other places, but I know for sure that it's on Prime. Next up was a horror comedy. This come from Eli Craig, the guy who made Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, and it's called Little Evil 2017. It's come out this year. 95-minute runtime, not rated. This is a Netflix flick. That sounds weird saying that. It was a Netflix film starring Evangelina Lilly, Adam Scott, and Clancy Brown. The synopsis: Gary, who has just married Samantha, the woman of his dreams, discovers that her 6-year-old son may be the Antichrist. So, you got that going for you. And the trailer, I will tell you right off the bat, caught my interest. But I'm not going to lie, I was kind of disappointed with this film. I had really high hopes for another Tucker and Dale vs. Evil type of horror comedy, which Eli Craig also directed. It's not a bad film, but the laughs were a little too few and far between for me. They also seemed kind of forced at times. I thought the film had its moments, but it just wasn't consistent. I will say there are a few generally touching moments, though, which I wasn't expecting, so it did have that going for it. Part of me thinks this one might get better upon repeat viewings. I'm not really sure why I feel that way, but maybe it's because I wanted to like it more than I did, because I'm such a fan of Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, and I really want to see Eli Craig do more stuff. It is worth a watch, but if you were as excited as I was to see this one, lower your expectations going in. My rating for this was a 5.5 out of 10. The IMDb rating was 5.9 out of 10. Moving along, I have a couple more to talk about, and then, that will be that until the next one. Looking through my files. This one, this movie Sorry, could have another drink of coffee. My throat's dry. Is The Dungeon Master, aka Rage War, 1984. This is directed by a slew of different directors. Some you might recognize: John Carl Buechler, the guy, the Charles Brand, bunch of other people. 73 minutes long, so it's really short. PG-13. I watched this on DVD. Starring Jeffrey Byron, Richard Mole, and Leslie Wang. The synopsis: a demonic wizard challenges a modern-day computer programmer to a battle of technology versus sorcery, with the programmer's girlfriend as the prize. As a young teen, I probably would have adored this film for all its cheesiness. As an adult, not so much. This movie is a train wreck of ideas. While some of them had potential, they weren't given enough screen time to be figured out in a cohesive manner. Instead, we're left with a film that bounces around more than a 2-year-old after eating a candy bar. It never really gains its footing, and I found myself looking up at the clock or my phone on more than one occasion. The effects for this were, for the most part, pretty decent. They run the gamut of good 80s practical and Harryhausen-esque stop motion to C-grade puppet effects. The acting is over the top, which in turn becomes a bit comical in Mystery Science Theater 3000 fare-esque at times. Let's not forget the score. The music isn't bad, but it, like the movie, couldn't figure out what the hell it wanted to be. It feels somewhere between a bad Star Wars knockoff, Rocky, and a generic 80s horror movie score. Sometimes that diversity works in a film, not so much here. I can't say I won't end up watching this one again, because I will. Despite my scathing review, I did find it entertaining for all the wrong reasons. One of those films that are not good, and I know it, but I will still watch anyway. Masters of the Universe, anyone? My rating for this was a 3.5 out of 10. The IMDb rating is 4.0 out of 10. So, one more. And I talked about this on the show with Jay Cochran a couple episodes ago. But I wanted to give you my review of it. I didn't talk with this with Jay. I talked with Rachel Levitt the other day. And that is 2017's It, directed by Andy Muschietti. Runtime of 135 minutes, rated R. This is in the theater, starring Bill Skarsgård, Jaden Lieber, and Finn Wolfhard. The synopsis: 7 young outcasts in Derry, Maine are about to face their worst nightmare, an ancient, shape-shifting evil that emerges from the sewer every 27 years to prey on the town's children. Banding together over the course of one horrifying summer, the friends must overcome their own personal fears to battle the murderous, bloodthirsty clown known as Pennywise. This film has been a brutal one for me when it comes to scheduling. 2 different days I'd planned to go, and things happened that prevented it from happening both days. Finally, I ended up being able to go and check it out. There's been a lot of hype around this film, maybe more so than I have ever seen for a Stephen King adaptation in years. That both had me excited and nervous, as Stephen King movies are so hit or miss. I think in most cases, probably more of the latter. But I'm glad to say this film was everything I had hoped it would be and more. Not only was it creepy as all shit, it was quite funny. Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things as Richie was perfect. He nailed the embodiment of that character and stole the show, in my honest opinion. Sophia Lillis' performance as Beverly was also awesome. The emotion she was able to portray without coming off as cheesy was phenomenal. All of the kids were excellent in their parts. Also, I have to mention Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise. While I loved Tim Curry's performance in the original miniseries as much as the next person, Skarsgård was creepy as hell. His tone and mannerisms were freaky and dead on. At the same time, I think he also honored much of the subtlety that made Curry's performance in the original so good. I loved all the little Easter eggs that were scattered throughout the film. The songs in the film were perfect. The score was awesome. I love the visual palette they chose to go with. I honestly can't complain about much of anything with this film. Also, all the things I was able to pick up that scream downtown Bangor, Maine, or Maine in general. Did anybody else notice the Freeze's department store shirt Richie was wearing? Just one of the many little things that's in there. While it's updated a bit from the original novel, from what I remember, I think it did a fantastic job of keeping the spirit of that story, and there were changes, but that didn't hurt anything. They were very easy to roll with. Granted, it has been years since I last read the book, and my memory is foggy on much of it. Honestly, it's the first time I've been to a horror movie in the theater in a while, and I was reminded how much I love seeing horror movies in the theater, especially good ones. Experiencing the reactions of the people watching it with you is part of the fun, and I sure as hell enjoyed that. There was 3 girls sitting in front of me, and there's a couple of parts in that are super jumpy, and I thought one girl was gonna throw her drink in the air because she jumped so bad and screamed. And I may be sadistic, but man, that put a smile on my face watching those type of reactions and watching people like get scared. And I'm pretty attuned to a lot of stuff that happens in horror because I'm such a horror movie junkie. A lot of times it doesn't quite catch me because I kind of either figure out that it's coming or just it takes a lot to jump me when watching a film sometimes. But part of the great experience, like I said, of going to the theater and seeing a good horror movie is watching other people's reactions. This was the first horror film I had seen in the theater since the latest Blair Witch. So I'm happy as hell the hype was real with this one. I can't wait to see it again. I might even watch it one more time before it leaves the theater. And it's been a long time since that happened. Right now, depending on how it holds up on repeat viewings, this might be the best Stephen King adaptation yet. Horror films, at least. I think this is... I think this might give The Shining and a run for its money. But I think that will be open for debate, and it's hard to tell because The Shining is one of like the most enduring horror films ever. Despite, even though we know most everyone knows Stephen King hates that adaptation. It's damn good, though. My rating for this was 9 out of 10. IMDb's rating on this was an 8.1 out of 10. So, that is it for this review cast. Like I said, I will be posting these reviews up. As always, I do include the trailers for the film, so you can check them out if you've never seen them before. It might give you a better idea or pique your interest a little more. Again, you can find that on the facebook.com /Average Joe's Drive-In Podcast. You can also find me on Instagram at Thomas Washburn Jr. Hit up my website, www.thomaswashburnjr.com. Again, I would like to thank my sponsor, the Maine Cannababes. Please visit their website, maincannababes.com. Don't forget to use your code word Average Joe's Drive-In for a chance to win a autographed picture of your favorite Maine Cannababe. And I'm going to leave you with a song from, this is actually something I wrote many years ago. And I hope you enjoy it. In tribute to the Stephen King-averse. The song is called Too Much Horror by my project Johnny Gruesome. Thank you guys, and I will see you sexy animals on the flip side.
I think I've lost my mind. Images running through my head. I slowly go insane from the images of the dead. in my